in the words of Coach Wheeler, bam, 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 bam. All right, so as you can tell, it is story time, and it's time for me to talk about being a player and a coach for the Carlyle Indians. I graduated from Carlyle in 2000, and I came back to Carlyle in 2005 and was a volunteer assistant basketball coach and football coach for 4 years, maybe 4 years, I think. So, 4 years. So, it was a time in my life that both 4 year spans, were times in my life that I prepared myself for everything that I face on a daily basis now. And that's exactly what you want out of your school. That's exactly what you want out of your community. And I was very fortunate to grow up in what I feel like is one of the greatest towns on the planet. The funniest part about when I went down to Miami is there were some things that I was thankfully clueless about. For instance, DJ Williams was one of my teammates at Miami. He's a linebacker, and he played at De La Salle High School in California that had the longest winning streak in the history of, high school football. And I seriously thought we could probably have a chance to beat them. I didn't comprehend that my high school team was a team of, between 22 and 30 kids on varsity, and we didn't really have anybody that could run a 4.5 or a 4.6 like they could. But I didn't know. And that's the thing that's going to be kind of the theme as I go through all this is, I was awkward and didn't have a clue about reality in life. And at times that was a good thing, and times that was maybe embarrassing at times. But anyway, let me get to business here. So, growing up, my brother Phil and my sister Tracy, my sister was 14 years older than me, and my brother was 13 years older than me. And my sister ended up playing golf at Illinois, and my brother played basketball at Illinois and then transferred to Iowa State. And so, I had always grown up going to the high school for basketball camp and other things. When my brother was around, especially when he was in college, he would come in and use the weight room, and I would come into the school with him. And, my brother has a big picture of him in the hallway at Carlyle High School with his jersey retired. And that was always a goal for me, was to get up by him and push myself to work hard to get that. And my sister, she wasn't necessarily, like, her picture didn't get up for college for one reason or another. I'm not sure why, but, there was a picture of her on her softball team that had won conference or regional or something. And so I would walk down that hallway every day and see my brother and my sister on those pictures and, think about them and, want to live up to that. Okay. Now, I should preface this by saying, and this is something that is kind of behind the scenes, people don't really realize it, but it, at the end of the day, made me a better coach and a better person, and pushed me to my limits. My dad, who passed away last year in March, he really wanted us to be successful in sports, okay? Almost to the point that sometimes it created a barrier between us. And, my brother had my dad, the version of my dad that he could take him to the gym and work out with him and push him and run him and, run him into the ground and wear him out. And, my version of my dad was, he had a back injury, and it was right around the time I started playing organized sports. I had played t-ball and like coach pitch before, but when he got hurt, I was in maybe 4th or 5th grade and just starting, basketball, and, he was disabled until he passed. So that was a long time, 20 some years. So my experience with my dad was my mom would come to every one of my games, and she had this old camcorder that weighed probably, 25 pounds back in the day. It's not like she could have pulled out her phone like it could now. It was a camcorder, and it had a little red light on it. And that little red light always meant the world to me whenever I saw that in the stands. And, I always looked up, saw that little red light. But the side effect of that was, my dad, who could not come to the games, now had a video that we could review. And so we would stat all my games, and we would talk about how, it was either a good game or it wasn't good enough. At that time, I would get so stressed out about it, because my dad would do things like say, if you don't get 10 rebounds this game, I'm gonna make you quit. That's what he would do. He'd say, I'm gonna make you turn in your jersey. And, there were a lot of incidences like that. He came to one of my baseball practices when I was in 6th grade. And first off, he was mad that I didn't make the 7th grade team as a 6th grader because all my friends made it. And then he got to practice, and, we had a batting practice, and our coach was actually, he was a good guy, and he was sick. And so he was like sitting in the dugout sick, and as a coach, I've been there before where it's like, guys, I need you guys to practice hard today. And, I got to hang out and stay away from you. Well, my dad saw him sit in the dugout the whole time and said that, I wasn't going to get any better doing this. He just wanted to take me home and use me have me hitting the batting cage and other things like that. And so the next day at school, he made me quit and turn in my jersey. And he wrote a note, and that was that with baseball for me. I did come back and play in 7th grade and freshman year, but that was kind of my baseball career. I was pretty decent, but there was a really good class behind me, and so I'll get to that later. But so like I said, my dad was always tough on me, and having watched this Michael Jordan documentary, my dad was a lot like Michael Jordan in his demanding of excellence and the way he would treat you if you were not being excellent. He always made sure he loved me, or he said he loved me, and he always made sure I knew that, and I always did, and I always knew that he was trying to do what's best for me, but it didn't always feel that way in the moment. So that was something that was huge throughout my entire career. And the thing you'll see is that football became my successful sport because I wasn't stressed about it. My dad didn't really know a lot about football to the point where, as an offensive lineman, he didn't know what the plays were. If I said I did a good job, then he'd be like, oh, okay, So I excelled in that arena. But again, my mom just took me to everything, was always there videoing things, and, was my rock when things were tough. On days when he made my mom go wash my uniform because I was going to have to turn them in because I didn't start, in high school or junior high. That was that. So anyway, I, was part of the first group to go to the Carlyle Junior High, the new building, and we were the 8th grade class. And that was a really up and down year for me. And as a coach now, looking back, I understood what the message was. Having a brother who was a Converse All-American, one of the top 75 players in the country, I oftentimes, even though I never thought of it this way, like everybody looked at me like I didn't work hard and like I was expecting things to be handed to me. And that wasn't the case. But, during my 8th grade year, I remember, I was very lucky that I had PE with Coach Dooley because he always kept my mind focused on the right things. But during basketball season, I think I was kind of benched quite a bit because I was out of shape and overweight. And, they were trying to get that little, everybody always spent my whole youth trying to get me angry. And that wasn't how I functioned. I couldn't do it. I can't just be angry and do well at things. I got to do it because I want to. So I get to high school and I play football for the first time, and it was a great year. Joe Wilkerson and Kevin Meyer were my freshman coaches. There were a couple freshmen that got moved up to varsity for the playoff game. I was not one of them, and that was probably a good move because where I was at mentally, I did not think I was going to play my sophomore year. So I go to basketball season, and during basketball season, there was a lot of admitted, kind of tension between me and some of the players that were worried that, hey, this guy's going to get, a benefit because of his brother. And that wasn't the case really. So there were a couple of my friends that got moved up to JV, and I was on freshman ball, and, my dad wasn't happy about that. But I played an awesome season that year as a freshman, and, we won freshman conference champs, and it was amazing. I played for Coach Dooley, who is going to end up being one of my best friends as an adult and as a coach. And, it was a lot of fun. And the whole year I wanted to get moved up, but never did. We actually had the guys that were JV guys get moved down for a few games. So it was a good season for me, a good confidence builder. And for me, I always wanted to be a basketball player. That's all I ever wanted to do. And my dad made me play my freshman year of football so that I could get more physical and be tougher. I thought I was a basketball player, and that was it. And so I remember the summer of my sophomore year, we had open gym every morning. I'd be one of the first people there. I'd sweep the floor. I'd start shooting around, and then everybody else would show up. We'd play games. But then at one point, football weightlifting started. And it was that first day, and I hadn't told my mom or dad yet what I wanted to do. So it was the first day of lifting, and I remember I was shooting free throws when everybody else went down and lifted. And my quarterback, Grant Heinzman, who would also end up being one of my best friends, he came to me and was like, "Cooney, we need you, man. Why aren't you down here lifting?" And I'm like, "All right, let's go." So I walked down there and started lifting, and started working hard, and that was kind of where I started getting my confidence. And I remember specifically one thing as a coach. I remember specifically my freshman year. Like I said, I wasn't sure I wanted to play the next year, but there was one moment that got me to love football. And I just remember we were running a play, and I can't remember the number we used for it, but it was a trap, and I was playing guard. And check that. It was a trap, and I was playing tackle. And I was able to veer release inside of the defensive end and go up and block the linebacker and break a play open in practice. And Coach Wilkerson got so excited about that in my block. And that moment was the moment that opened the possibility of me wanting to continue playing football, because all of the shoots and hitting the sleds and all that stuff was not for me. I faked so many neck injuries, my neck hurts from pushing the sleds. So anyway, back to sophomore year. I start out on JV on sophomore team for 2-a-days, and I'm thankful for that. I had gotten in the best shape of my life, realized that as a freshman I was 285 pounds, and I had worked hard to get down to 250 pounds as a sophomore. So I was about 6'5", 6'5 and a half, 250, and I was on the sophomore team. Went through 2-a-days, and we got to like maybe 2 days left before school started, and we started preparing for the first 2 weeks of practice. And one of our linemen gets hurt. Asa Lowe, a good friend of mine. He's been a friend for a long time. He hurt his arm, broke his arm, and Coach Wheeler called me into the office. I sat down in the office, and I remember him saying, like, hey, you know, we need you to check with your parents, because my dad my Coach Wheeler had issues with my dad in the past. Not that he had done anything wrong, but my dad, when my brother was a freshman in high school, his pants for baseball were too small, too short, because my brother was so tall. And my dad didn't like that, so he made him quit baseball. So I think they were kind of shy to do anything that changed to avoid, you know, my dad just pulling me from football. But they came in and they're like, hey, you know, talk it over with your parents. We'd love to have you up on varsity. I'm going crazy on the inside because I'm like, yes, this is awesome. This is great. I was psyched about it. Went home, told my parents, and that was that. So I ended up starting as a sophomore all 9 games at guard. You know, I went to the basketball season, was on JV quite a bit, but started getting playing time in basketball, and, you know, things were good looking up. Things were, you know, I was getting more confident every day, I felt like. And I had a knee infection. I had a cut that had opened up during football season, and because of that cut, there was like a cyst in there in my knee, and it opened up on the day after I missed the game-winning free throws at Redbud. And I couldn't barely walk on my knee. It was really hot to the touch. I ended up having an infection, and it was I was out for the rest of the season, my sophomore year. So that kind of ended that season. But during that time period, I started getting my first recruiting letters. My dad took my 8x10 picture of my sophomore football picture, wrote a note on the back of it, and sent it out to like 100 different colleges. And most of them wrote back, and it was getting fun in that aspect of things. And so I didn't know how to handle it. I felt kind of selfish because I was a team guy in football. Like, I cared about the team. I didn't want to look like I was trying to put myself out there higher than everybody else. That was like my main concern, is I didn't want my coaches to think that I was trying to be a prima donna, as they would say. So that sophomore year, you know, in football, working with Rob Funderburk, he got me in the best shape of my life. And, you know, between Coach Wheeler and Coach Dooley, just, you know, those three just kind of poured into me and got me to love football and got me to understand what I needed to do, and there it was. So moving into my junior season, I had a lot of, you know, like I said, a lot of people following me, a lot of people recruiting me. It wasn't the Twitter generation where, you know, I was on Edgy Tim's list or anything like that, but you know, we were a good small school program, and I had the opportunity to play and work hard my junior year. And then basketball season my junior year was really rough on me because I thought coming in I was going to be a 2-year starter and you know, do great things, and I probably started maybe 60 to 75% of the games as a junior. I wasn't in shape. That was definitely a downfall for me in basketball, was I just was not in shape. I couldn't play defense. Looking back, I was so selfish as a basketball player because I led the team in points, I led the team in rebounds, and I led the team in blocks. And I was probably 6th or 7th in minutes for both my junior and senior year. So, you know, I definitely I didn't understand at the time. And going home to my dad didn't make it any easier to have games where maybe you'd sit on the bench for most of the game when you expect to start, and it was what it was. It is what it is. So looking back on it, it made me a better person. It made me a better coach, because I understand that there are conversations that are had at home that never make it to you, and you got to kind of think about, what's this kid dealing with at home. It's always a crapshoot. I mean, there were multiple times that my dad wanted me to quit basketball because of different things that happened. A game where I didn't play a lot, or a game where I played terrible. So my senior year, we had a really good team for football. And at the time, I thought I was going to Illinois. That's where I wanted to go, and that's where I thought I was going to go. But I started out the season as a senior. I know Coach Wheeler and Coach Dooley were trying to get under my skin big time, because they just wanted me to be ferocious, and they wanted what's best for me. I remember going to Miami football camp and Mario Cristobal telling me that he needed to see film of me destroying people, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to destroy people, but I couldn't get that edge to me, and they tried and tried. I remember one day going into the locker room, and Coach Wheeler had drawn a football field up on the board and drew a play on the board, and then he drew this big circle on the sideline and said, "See that, Cooney? That's you if you don't start getting some fire in your belly." He did a really good job of not alienating me from the team because of the recruiting stuff. I mean, I think the worst comment that I got during that time period was because I couldn't do push-ups in high school at all. I was so weak upper body, even though I lifted every day, I was so weak. I couldn't do push-ups. And we were doing push-ups in practice as we were doing a drill where you had to get a first down, or you had to do push-ups. And I couldn't do them. And he goes, "Do you want me to film this and send it to Bobby Bowden? I'm sure he'd love to see this." I think that was kind of the closest thing to a negative statement he would say. But my senior year was a lot of fun for football. We started out 4-1 or 3-1, and we were like, man, we're gonna be a playoff team. And this is a time period when there were less classes, and there were you had to be 6-3 to make the playoffs. You had to be. And our first loss was to the team that won state in Missouri, and we had been beating them, but we were a team of 24 juniors and seniors, and they had a lot more kids than we did. And so we got tired in the fourth quarter, and they ended up beating us at the end of it. We were battle tested in that. And then we lost a game we had the ball with a chance to score, and we didn't score at a rival Central. We had the ball with a chance to score, and we didn't score at Freeburg to win the game. And then our other game we lost by, we had the lead, and they onside kicked it and recovered it, and they went down and scored, and we couldn't stop them. So, we were a team that, the games we won, we blew everybody out. We had shutouts, I think, for the most part. And the games we lost were the close ones, and we just ran out of gas. That's what happens when you don't have the numbers. So that was my football season. Basketball season, again, was a lot of fun. I had a terrible attitude as an athlete because I was very selfish. Part of that was not wanting to go home after a game I didn't play a lot, but I definitely had fun. Definitely had a good season. We won the regional, and it was only the third time, I think, in school history we won the regional in basketball. We had a really tough regional, always, with Central and Mater Dei. We beat Central and Mater Dei. We ended up losing to Oakville in the sectional finals, which was a tough loss because, we had grown up playing that group our whole lives, and we had beaten them for the most part. and we were kind of the thorn in their side. And then Ryan Heck, who is a good friend of mine, played basketball at Troy State. He transferred from Mascouda to Oakville with those guys, and he was lights out. We played them one game where they held the ball for the entire overtime. We went to overtime, and they got the tip, and he held it at half court, and he pulled up and shot it from the volleyball line to win the game. And we were trying to foul him. We couldn't get to him. He just dribbled around, fired it up. They won the game. So that was our basketball season. So all in all, I'm gonna split this in two. This is gonna be my as a player. I loved every minute of the guys I got to be around, my teammates. It was a lot of fun. There's so many names. I felt like we had one of the best old lines we could have had. We were solid. We had good running backs. We just kept getting banged up. There are billions of stories within this story that could be told. But, the thing is, I learned so much as a player. And, leaving high school, I had a chip on my shoulder to prove that I could be successful at Miami. And I learned what I needed to learn, and looking back on it again, and this is something that as a coach, I hope you do if you're a coach and you're watching this. Look back at how you were coached. Look back at how you reacted to it. Look back at how you handled different situations and evaluate where your mind was, because I'll tell you this, when I came back and coached for Carlyle right after being in college, I still had the same mindsets, and I hadn't grown yet. I hadn't grown mentally yet. So that is my player story in a nutshell. But again, at the end of the day, I could not be more thankful for the coaches that I had in high school. Whether it's, Coach Wheeler, the hours that we spent in the weight room, out on the football field, just the fact that he believed in me and pushed me, the fact that he made me quit baseball so I could lift in the spring because he was the head baseball coach. I appreciated that. Coach Dooley, like I've said before, that man has spent more time with me than almost anybody on the planet. He was my second grade PE teacher. He was my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade PE teacher. And then he was my football coach and my basketball coach all 4 years in high school. With the exception of springtime in the high school, I saw that man every day of school. And he was always pushing me to be better. And he always did a great job of reading when I was down and trying to lift me up. And when I was too far up, he broke me down. And that was what I needed. And that freshman year of basketball was probably the turning point in my career, because he pushed me to my limits, and I loved it. And that was the first time I could say that. I wasn't afraid to work, but I was a little bit lazy, so I appreciate that. Rob Funderburk, I remember just how intense he was, and his intensity kind of poured in over me. Even if I couldn't get myself to be angry the way people wanted and be violent with myself, as far as, blocking or being aggressive in basketball, his intensity carried over me, and that's what I had. I was intense. I was intense. I was even keeled. And Coach Weathers, one of the best high school basketball coaches in Illinois history. Hall of Famer, state champion, and he's somebody that I looked up to from my brother playing, going to basketball camp every year in the summer, Carlyle Indian basketball camp. I have every shirt from Carlyle Indian basketball camp. And the way he pushed me to my limit and coached me how I should have been coached was just awesome. And the way that I was able to develop because of adversity I'd faced, I'm glad I wasn't just handed things, if that makes sense. Um, and I understand what he was doing whenever like there were games that I didn't get to play. You know, when you are a high school player, you don't understand that there is strategy. You don't understand that there are matchups. You just keep thinking, well, I can score. You know, that's all you think about. So um, I am so appreciative of him and just the time he invested in me and my teammates. And, you know, we were excited that we were able to win him a regional. So we'll stop there with story time part 1 here of Carlyle being a player, and I'll come back to being a coach next time.